Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. Hopefully you're having an amazing Sunday. This is a feast day, and I don't usually go live on Sundays, but I wanted to do a special episode for a couple of reasons. Number one, because we're leaving this week. We're actually taking the vacation, taking a little time off, about a week off from being on air, because I haven't done that this summer so far. And it's important to react to the Charlie Kirk case while it's timely. That brings me to reason number two. All of the last 2 weeks on my part, when I'm spending it researching, I have turned to this topic of the Charlie Kirk assassination, which I had tabled until now. I have not been doing Charlie Kirk stuff. From September the 10th until now, I looked into it a little bit at the beginning of all this, defended Erica Kirk, saying, look at this poor grieving widow the first day or two. I think day 3 or 4, I said, wow, her behavior is really strange, but I didn't look into it. And of course, since then, it's become a full-fledged national discourse, new topic over which we can scream at each other. And I only started looking back into it about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. I have a friend that religiously watches this stuff, and he's someone I trust. And I began looking into it, and I will come to you guys now as one of the people on it. If we're being honest here, I have one of the deepest bags on the internet. And I'm just, you know, false humility being the kind of shell of a concept for phonies. I'm not going to go through that, but like literally, whether it's theology or philosophy, history, even literature, for heaven's sakes, but law, these are all things I have degrees in, all of them. And law is what it's a nous or an expertise that is deeply needed here. I see this on the interwebs when I look at the discourse, the way that it unfolds between I guess what's the normie side of the narrative, that Charlie Kirk was killed on September the 10th by a kooky, crazy lone shooter, for which there's really no evidence, particularly for the proposition that it's a lone shooter named Tyler Robinson. And then the other side, screaming at each other, are the people, basically anybody else who says, no, it's probably not a lone shooter. Some of them say it's not a shooter at all. It's an exploding incendiary device from the microphone. Some of them say maybe it's a shooter, but there was another shooter on the other building because there was another expelled cartridge, unused cartridge, not just the shell casing, on the adjacent building. So maybe there's a few shots like what Israel did on the grassy knoll together with the whatever deep state on November the 22nd, 1963. Other people think it was maybe Tyler Robinson, but just a patsy. No one knows. This is where things get really interesting. And as someone with nous in the law, I definitely learned this past week from a couple conversations I had with friends behind the scenes. One was Andrew Wilson, who's a friend, and his wife, Rachel, who's a friend. Andrew now kind of works in some capacity for TPUSA, and he has one view of the event closer to the normie view. I don't know exactly what his view is, but it's significantly closer to the normie view. I spoke to Jay Dyer, another friend behind the scenes, just asking him because he's smart in my view on conspiracies and things like that. He doesn't get carried away, doesn't have kooky theories, but he gets them, tends to get them right. And I spoke to a few other friends besides. I spoke to John Yep with Catholics for Catholics, extended talk we just spoke today. I spoke to Jesse Romero. Now, the latter two Catholic men, the first two are Orthodox, are both boots on the ground there in the Phoenix area. And they both knew Charlie Kirk personally. So I'm going to cover three basic things tonight, and I'm going to try to run through it and not play hide the ball the way a law prof does. Number one, I'm going to give you an evidence tutorial because what I learned talking to Andrew and Jay, by their own admission, is wow, I really didn't know these basic things about evidence. And I see, and Jay has a different view of it, closer to mine than Andrew. But both of them said, wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So we need to go through a quick, hopefully 15-minute evidence tutorial with regard to the latter two folks I've spoken to on the phone about. And I've spoken to a lot of other people, by the way, over the last 2 weeks as I do my research. This is the way I roll. But Jesse and John are Catholic boots on the ground guys there in Phoenix. They're both good Catholic men, and they helped me to form this Catholic timeline, Catholic relevant timeline with regard to Charlie Kirk, who really was becoming Catholic. Even though you've been told the opposite, we'll talk about why. It's relatively simple a narrative. To me, this story is becoming quite clear and it's quite obvious. And then I want to go through the Israel timeline that I tweeted out and Candace was interacting with yesterday. And it gained a lot of traction. And people are saying to me who know more about this case, keep going. Because I don't think anyone's put together the good Charlie and Israel fallout timeline. But I will say this, and again, I'll stop talking this way after I make this comment, particularly among Catholic commentators, but also Catholic or just conservative commentators in general. Some of the conservative commentators have a law degree, right? But they're not trained in all various things I'm trained in. So I'm kind of on the case now, and I'm pretty interested in it. And I've got a pretty deep bag. And so I think it's relevant. Where I can help clarify that I don't think it's been clarified in this first, 10 months of conspiracy theorizing is, one, not a lot of good comms, meaning back the cam out and go 50,000 feet and say, look, this is what we do know so far. There's a lot we don't know. This is what we do know about the assassination. It's a political assassination. Here's what we do know. Here's what we don't. And I'm pretty good at that. And the timeline I put together that I'm going to put on the screen when I get to it, I think will show it to you. Even if you're skeptical, you can call in. We'll take a couple calls at the end. Yell at me or whatever in, one line or under. I don't really feel like hearing it on a Sunday for longer than a line. But you'll see, I think I can convince you with just a timeline of seeing it, at least my point of view right now. But also the evidence tutorial. This is most needed. And this is the first third of the show that I'm going to start out with right now. What actually is evidence? There is so much confusion that's been generated on this point that seems to be favoring the normie narrative. What actually is evidence? And it is brainwash programming that comes from true crime TV and movies. Oh, that's not evidence. There's not a shred of evidence. There's not this. That's circumstantial evidence. We'll talk about it. It won't take that long. It's reasonably straightforward stuff. And that's what we're going to jump into. Then we'll get to the Catholic timeline and the Israel timeline, the two sort of primordial foes, Catholic Church and Israel. And we have two separate timelines. We'll get to that soon. First, I want to remind you, two of the big projects on this channel are associated with our only two official partners. First, get out of your bad place, whether it's a blue state or just you're in the inner city, and get to a good place, whether that means a red state or just the rural environment, even within your city. Go to www.realestateforlife.org. You can't really be safe enjoying your environs with your family unless you're someplace where your neighbors, even if you don't know them so well, look, sound, talk like you. think like you. Go to www.realestateforlife.org, and they will help you live this element of true Catholic republicanism, true Catholic subsidiarity that you just can't have if you just live wherever you transferred last. realestateforlife.org. The second partner associated with the second big pillar of this channel is self-subsistence. And in order to be self-subsistent, whether you're rich, poor, or in between, you got to protect what you have. Go to St. Joseph Partners, buy their precious metals, gold and silver, expensive already, probably getting more expensive. This is not financial advice. Today, I just did it a little bit ago, and I checked back in with them a month before I got hooked up with them. And I said, I'd like to partner with you guys. And they said, we were wanting to have you partner with us. So go to St. Joseph Partners and shore up the wealth that you do have, maybe make some extra wealth by buying silver and gold today from good Catholic silver and gold dealers. I was going to say smiths, but they're not hammering this stuff. All right, and if you want to support the channel,
dwarves and like Ministereth or whatever.
Yeah, not dwarves. But finally, if you want to support the channel the easy way, like, subscribe, click the notification bell. And if you want to help beyond that, locals is how you do it. Rules for Retrogrades. We are going to be releasing the Catholic Republic documentary. If you want to help executive produce this thing, invest, that is. We do need a couple, 3 last investors whose name will appear as executive producer. Reach out to me, Timothy J. Gordon at timothyjgordon.com. Okay, that took a long time to get through all that. Now we're going to race. Here's the thing I noticed talking to both Andrew and Jay. Very different conclusions about this. What my friend Andrew Wilson kept saying to me is and he's on, the opposite side of this one, and we usually agree about stuff, but he was saying there's not a shred of evidence to support a conspiracy. And I said, okay, look, this isn't exactly what I said, but my takeaway was there are 2 words you're using wrong. And the first one is evidence, the term evidence. What actually constitutes evidence? And so let's go through that right now. When we say evidence, the legal standard for us English speakers, remember, history of the English speaking peoples, this goes back to well before Magna Carta, to something called the Ancient English Constitution. It wasn't written. Not a written constitution. And that's the source of the common law, which is in one sense judge-made law. It's the system of law that we had in England, the Republic, in England, the Empire, spilled over to the English empires holding here in the Americas. And we've had it before we even had a Declaration of Independence. We have basically the English common law system, Blackstonian. In the common law tradition, we set aside civic trials from jury trials, civil trials from jury trials. And in jury trials, criminal trials, what constitutes evidence is bizarrely more expansive than what the public has assumes because of TV and movies. Usually a term is a term of art and narrower, less capacious than the public use. Here, it's narrower. What's evidence? There's not any evidence that there's a conspiracy. And there's conspiracy is the second term that I think I was taking away from my talks with my friends. We need to define what is a conspiracy. Well, there is ample evidence. What people mean, but normies are probably out there muttering this to themselves or their families if they're watching this, is there is not much material evidence to support really anything in this case. And that's true. There's not much material evidence that is used to support any criminal case usually. Most criminal cases do not have much or any material evidence. I'm talking biological materials, proof from DNA, fingerprints, blood, spit, semen, whatever. Videotape, sound recording. And this is also, for most purposes, this can be called direct evidence. Most cases don't turn on it. They don't have a lot of it. In other words, most people think that the only thing that constitutes evidence is what's about 2-3% of evidence in criminal cases. Very rare, doesn't even appear in most cases, and wouldn't have really appeared in that full plenary form I'm describing ever before 20 to 30 years ago. What do you guys think Sherlock Holmes was doing when he was using inferences to figure out who did it? What do you think all of the detectives in the long-standing English common law tradition were doing? What do you think criminal trials in the long-standing English common law trial were predicated on? Not material evidence. The earliest kind of material evidence is, I guess, dusting for fingerprints. And that's really fallible stuff. And that's only, I didn't look into it. I meant to look it up. Probably 150, 200 years old that you could dust for fingerprints, maybe a little older. So if all evidence is material evidence, then that would mean that evidence really didn't exist in the English common law, and jury trials couldn't go forward before 30, 40, 50 years ago. Did you have something, Steph?
Yeah, I was just going to mention what we were talking about on the walk. Cases that, famous cases that everybody knows about that have virtually no direct evidence. Scott Peterson, Alex Murdoch, Michael Peterson, Lacey Peterson case, George Joseph Smith, O.J. Simpson, let's see, Stephen Avery from the Making a Murderer, Lindsay.
To be fair, O.J. Simpson had direct evidence. The black jury ignored it, but right. It was mostly decided on circumstantial. That's a perfect example, a hybrid case. Most of the important evidence there was not the DNA evidence. Most of it was circumstantial. That's the other type of evidence, most evidence. But yeah, go on with that list. Sorry, that's helpful. Yeah, most of these cases, zero or very small amounts.
Trayvon Martin, the George Zimmerman case. Yeah, so it's like these Robert Durst, all these cases, by the way, were circumstantial cases. So I think a lot of people who are legal muggles, they don't realize that, yes, you can take somebody to trial and even convict them without direct evidence, meaning there's no video camera of them doing something. There's no, like, the people who watch Forensic Files just think that anytime there's a rape or a murder, there's just semen everywhere. Like, you cannot have biological evidence. You can have none of these hard evidences, right? It could be strictly circumstantial, and people can and do get convicted strictly on circumstantial cases.
Well, thank goodness, because the other type of evidence, the evidence that people have been brainwashed by TV and movies, that's just circumstantial evidence, is the vast majority, 97% of the evidence. You just read a bunch of cases right now that were convicted almost solely on the case of circumstantial evidence, like exclusively. I'll add to that list. I think you said the Lacey Peterson murder trial. We have Adnan Syed. Let's go through some other ones. Yeah, Casey Anthony. Did I say Lacey Peterson's murder? Scott Peterson, 2004.
Scott Peterson was convicted for killing 2 people on circumstantial evidence.
Right. Circumstantial evidence is good. Really strong evidence. Yeah. Adnan Syed, 1999 conviction. Casey Anthony, I was mixing up Lacey Peterson and Casey Anthony. Remember that one that was sort of ongoing while we were in Italy and got extended out? Entirely circumstantial. Prosecutors allege she murdered Kaylee Anthony, but the jury acquitted her of murder, illustrating that circumstantial cases obviously can either fail or stand based on circumstantial evidence. The staircase case, Michael Peterson, no eyewitnesses or confession, blood spatter evidence, injuries, computer history, marital issues formed the it was mainly the marital issues. Alex Murdaugh case, no eyewitness to the shooting, which would be kind of direct evidence. The case relied on cell phone, like basically dealing with financial motives and a little bit of material evidence, cell phone data, but there's not much of that. Lori Vallow, Daybell, Chris Dawson, these are other cases. David Cam had multiple trials. First 2 were particularly circumstantial. Lindy Chamberlain, this is an Australia case that was really famous right around the time we were born in 1982. That was basically a conviction. The Lindy Chamberlain case that was almost entirely circumstantial. It's very, very common. So in these rare instances, they, a guilty accused will have recorded themselves doing a murder or whatever, a rape, or in like urban black high school settings, they'll record themselves curb stomping a white kid or something, because there's an IQ issue there. But usually with most smarter murders, particularly ones, we're going to talk about what conspiracy is in a second, for over 1,000 years in the English-speaking tradition, the English-speaking peoples, the common law, which is 1,200 years old, has been based on circumstantial evidence. Evidence like this is one of the main things that turns a non-foul play case, where it was assumed that some, let's say, married guy died as a force majeure, into a foul play case with criminal investigation beginning, is when the spouse acts really weird. When there's a life insurance policy. Well, that doesn't, most married people have life insurance. If something happens to me, it wasn't Steph, right? It was Israel. But no, if something happens to me, it wasn't Steph. But we have a life insurance policy. But that's why you have to look into motives, interplay, the basic animal interaction, one with another. The irrational animals do it. They judge each other all the time based on having their body right in front of you. Think of two dogs that are about to fight. They flinch, they get locked in position, and sometimes they don't end up fighting. They walk past each other. Other times, one flinches the wrong way. And because we are built as animals with bodies to judge one another when someone's being nefarious or when someone's going to go ahead and act in an ultimately benign way, even irrational animals are capable of doing this. Well, the idea behind a jury trial, and this influences what I was saying earlier in the week about hearsay evidence. The basic idea of a jury trial is that humans are rational animals and even better BS detectors than two dogs who are about to fight. That prosecution will put on witnesses, defense will put on witnesses, and we are good. And witnesses are a type of test evidence, by the way. And just let the jury watch. The jury isn't even just listening to the words. Let the jury watch the prosecution's witness A and the defense's witness B, who are, let's say, they're positing the exact opposite proposition, saying exactly opposite things. The jury gets to watch and listen and watch closely, for not just overt lies, but for tics, tells, odd behaviors. And this applies to victim spouses too, folks. I started looking at this case. Now I'm on the case, right? And I'm saying that partly with my tongue in my cheek, but like a Columbo move. Like, now I'm on the case. Because when a spouse acts so odd, cashes out a life insurance policy, or is really way too happy, or said bizarre things the night their spouse got murdered an hour afterwards, or says something really odd and just isn't grieving, let's say 6 days afterwards, is more concerned with, say, hat sales at their husband's funeral event.
Taking weird
calls
pictures.
It the event of the century. Steph, the pictures?
Yeah, or taking weird pictures of the guy in his coffin, for example.
Weirdo
stuff like that.
That one really struck you. What really strikes me, or any guy, and I think also you, is spousal behavior 6 days after you're dead, when you're like, this was the event of the century, guys. I'm so psyched. I'm not trying to be morbid, but my husband's dead, okay? You're like, leave it behind. Weird. Hat sales. Let's talk about hat sales and my husband's funeral event. It was awesome. We made so much money. That's not normal. And it's very typical from someone that studied criminal law in law school. It's very typical for a case for investigators to go, we need to look into foul play here. When you have a spouse who's always suspect number one once the criminal investigation gets underway. The spouse is acting weird. We need to look into what they were doing, look at wire transfers if we can, bring them in, just chat with them more, get another look. Every second, third, fourth look that we got at Erica Kirk was weird. And I'm not saying I know what that means. Circumstantial evidence, the main kind of evidence, 97% of evidence, it's just more available. than direct material evidence? Yes, circumstantial evidence, by its definition, it requires inferences for it to go. But this is what Nancy Drew, Sherlock Holmes, the Hardy Boys books are based on. Or even who's any detective novels. Edgar Allan Poe has a whole underappreciated subgenre of his work that were detective novels. All of what makes geniuses like Sherlock Holmes geniuses is that they are making proper inferences from circumstantial evidence, because in Sherlock Holmes's day, that was the only kind of evidence. In our day, it's, let's say, 97% of evidence. Most cases, circumstantial evidence, equally valid in the eyes of the law as direct evidence or material evidence, which requires no inference when you see it. It's just much more available, and it's equally valid for circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence is more human, by the way. So a lot of people think, oh, well, if you have videotape of a man killing or doing something that looks like killing a woman, then that's the best evidence there could possibly be. What are you talking about, Tim? What are you talking about? That's so much better than this human error, circumstantial evidence, judging someone based on, judging a book by its cover. She was acting really weird or really suspicious, or she had a tech, or she was getting caught in lies, the spouse of this murdered guy. Here's where that could go wrong. What if, and actually, what's called direct evidence by law profs, material evidence, does end up requiring inferences, because you can do a case with just circumstantial and no direct evidence. You can't really make a conviction with just direct evidence but no circumstantial. So I would say circumstantial is not only more plenary, more available, but it's stronger. Here's what I mean. So you have a videotape of someone doing acts looking like killing their spouse. I'm not saying this is likely. I'm just saying it still requires an inference, because what if it's Halloween? What if they're murder mystery nuts? That's husband and wife, and they did a little home video acting out a murder mystery. That's not so plausible. So it requires a really simple circumstantial inference that the inference being they weren't doing that. This was for real. And there are a million ways to find that. But the problem is that doesn't normally present itself. Murderers don't tend to videotape what they're doing. Another famous example is the late 60s, early 70s serial TV show, The Fugitive, which is actually one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
That is an instance of basically no circumstantial evidence convicting a good doctor, Richard Kimball, of his wife's murder, but a lot of material evidence that suggested it. And even though circumstantially he loved his wife, he pursued his wife's killer, actually walked in and wrestled with his wife's killer. A one-armed man killed my wife. Remember that? Hilarious. He couldn't whoop that guy's ass. He's one-armed, for heaven's sake.
I know. It's like, you let one-armed guy kill your wife
and then get away with it? I think he was a Jew too. No, but according to the Fugitive movie, he seemed really Jewish. But here's the thing. Why did Richard Kimball in The Fugitive, the serial TV series in the 60s, 70s, and then the 90s movie, which is really good, go see it if you haven't. Why did he get convicted? Because his wife, when he was holding her before she died, she'd been brain hemorrhaged, hit over the head by the one-armed Jewish man, and she was scratching him, not knowing. And she had a bunch of his DNA under her nails. The killer used Dr. Richard Kimball's gun to do the kill shot, or the semi-kill shot. And what did he do? He used tape, gun tape. So he didn't have his prints on it, but it did have old prints from Richard Kimball. There's another thing. She made a 911 call, and they were saying, who's in the house? Who's in the house? And she was like hallucinating, saying her husband's name because she'd been hit over the head really hard. And she said, Richard, when they're like, wait, Richard's in the house? So that's a bunch of material direct evidence that betrays, because there was no circumstantial evidence to back it up. So circumstantial evidence is so common and so good, and most cases turn on circumstantial evidence. It's not some lower caste of evidence in the grand taxonomy of types of evidence. It's better evidence. And when you say this person was acting really suspicious, we can show means, motive, opportunity, and we can evidence means circumstantially in a strong way, motive circumstantially in a strong way, and opportunity circumstantially in a strong way. That's a solid case. You don't need material evidence.
Isn't that why when somebody dies, most often they'll look directly to the spouse?
Yeah.
Or the parents. I remember, with John Bonet when she died. I remember Elizabeth Smart when she was kidnapped. The police immediately look to the people around them. Not to say every single time something horrible happens, it's a direct family member, but means what do you say? Means
motive, opportunity.
Motive, opportunity. All three of those things usually land with direct relative or people who, were very close to the victim. So
precisely. And that's the first thing I learned in law school. Jean Ramirez, 2009 fall. She was like, circumstantial evidence is the main thing in crim law. Get all that piffle out of your head that you've seen in TV and movies. It's the main thing. And that's why really good investigators tend to be some of the smartest guys. That's why Sherlock Holmes novels or like The Purloined Letter, one of my favorite Edgar Allan Poe detective novels, you kind of have to be a genius, Agatha Christie. You have to be really smart to write detective novels because there's all these incredible connections, and they're inferential connections that great detectives used to make because they didn't have the crutch of material evidence. And here's why I think lawyers are on the average smarter than doctors, by the way. Doctors are being pushed toward this technical machine advantage, mechanical advantage, just taking a picture and looking at it. And in med schools, they'll tell you, this is why it's called the practice of medicine, because we don't just want to diagnose by symptoms and Sherlock Holmes this out. That's what a genius does. Okay. In med school, they go, well, it's called the practice of medicine because we're not going to diagnose till we can look at the thing. That's why we take a picture. Med school's pushing the mechanical advantage bias that's implicit in all of us. We're all these dumb moderns compared to ancients who it was harder to do philosophy, harder to do science, harder to do even theology, harder to do mathematics, harder to do astronomy. Before there was all this technology, they were way smarter back then. Harder to do law because they didn't have all these video cameras in this surveillance state, J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel surveillance state that's been handed down to us. But in law school, the first thing you learn, or first thing I learned, is get over your technical bias for machinery and your mechanical advantage you're obsessed with having. The best thing, the smartest lawyers are ones that are good with circumstantial evidence. So law school's pushing against the human bias to want to just take pictures of shit.
I remember
med school is working with that bias.
When I worked in veterinary medicine, that it's so funny you mentioned that all the doctors, whenever they would prescribe something, there would be like a literal chart where they wouldn't have to do math to just figure out a dose. Right. It would just be like, how much does this, bull mastiff weigh? And then boom, it was like on those old school charts where you would figure out like multiplication by like doing the, the finger thing where you just like on a chart, like follow it down.
Right.
That's how they would do the doses. I was like,
it's not giving me confidence.
Wow. Okay.
And a lot of lawyers want the easy route too, but you get your Sherlock Holmes, you get your county counsel, you get your prosecutor, you get, the famous stories, even Nancy Drew, girl detective, Hardy Boys. What is, to take it away from the darkling element of all this for a second, what is magical about reading a mystery novel on a hot, sunny summer afternoon? Like every Hardy Boys, every Nancy Drew novel feels like it was the beginning of summer. They go to their great uncle's mansion out in, the woods of Connecticut. And they first day, they're going to go to the market and they meet some of the locals, and the locals start telling them about a local mystery. And mystery begins with circumstantial evidence. Something's off. We are rational animals. We are built in the image of God to discern when something's off. First, it's a kind of broad intuition, hair stands up on the back of the neck, but then you can propositionalize it and start saying, that was really weird. That guy didn't seem that sad, that X, or that guy seemed way too happy, that Y. That chick seemed a little bit giddy for day 6 after blah, blah, blah. And then you go, let me check something real quick before I say anything I'm going to regret. And then you check, did you have a life insurance? Okay, you did. Did you stand to inherit something? You did. There's all this evidence that Israel might have killed JFK. Did JFK have anti-Israel policies that were reversed right afterwards? Okay, they did. Or Ollie Stone's theory of JFK. You know, the deep state wanted, because of the military-industrial complex, to be deeply involved in Vietnam. JFK had pulled out 1,000 troops, and was rumored that the two brothers, RFK, JFK, were working on a plan to get more troops out of Vietnam and to end the war. But then you have a regime change. Then you have a regime change where he's saying, I'm going to make a change. Coup d'etat, remove him, regime change, you get LBJ. This is just Ollie Stone's version of the events, but it's important. Then you get LBJ, signs basically a pre-Gulf of Tonkin document that reverses. It goes back to the status quo that this political assassination victim was about to reverse. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? That's why the Catholic timeline is so important here. Between February of 2025 and September of 2025, Charlie Kirk was deeply embedded in the Catholic scene in Phoenix, and lots of these are my friends, John Yep, Jesse Romero, others that they've pointed me to and at, and even my former bishop, Joseph Brennan, who fired me because I went too hard at BLM in 2020. Even Joseph Brennan had a personal conversation with Charlie Kirk on September the 2nd, 8 days before he was assassinated. And what did Charlie Kirk tell him? What Charlie Kirk told him is, I'm very close. And this is memorialized by Bishop Brennan's brother, who wrote an article for a Catholic mag. 2.5 weeks later, I'm very close to converting. And we'll go through the Catholic timeline in a second, but we're talking about circumstantial evidence, and this builds a strong case that means motive opportunity was all lining up in a way for deep state, Israel. Do I need to say more? In strong ways, there was some sort of coup d'etat, regime change, not in the US government, but in a paragovernmental organization called TPUSA, which needed to swap leaders to someone that would, like an LBJ in Ollie Stone's version, that would keep with the status quo. What was that status quo? Israel good. Israel good. Charlie was moving fast away from Israel good. We're going to go through that timeline. We'll put it on the screen. But all this is circumstantial evidence, and it's way more compelling than any of the, by itself, very weak evidence that they were even lying about the members of the 6 people that were there with Erica Kurt. They were lying about it in court. They're saying you can see who this is. Material evidence sucks because all you see is a guy on a roof.
If it's a guy, it could be any slim human being on the globe.
A human on a roof. A human went on a roof. This is very common even for videotape evidence. Remember all this whole spiel I opened with the first third of the show? What's evidence? Well, it's not just material or direct. It's better if it's circumstantial or indirect. Yes, it requires inferences, but human mind is built to make inferences. The direct evidence doesn't make the inference for you. All they're relying on is this pseudo direct evidence to say it was just a lone gunman on the grassy, not on the grassy knoll, in the book depository from the building top. And it's grainy footage that they're lying about. You can totally tell is this guy. They're not going to convict him with that.
It's on the screen right now. This could be like
anyone alive.
This could be like in the old Disney movies where they had like a bunch of cats, like in like a man's suit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like this. I mean, how are they telling what? How does anybody say they can tell who that is?
Well, they can't. They admitted they can't later, but the main takeaway was Jack Posobiec said at trial, I identified him and watched him. Also, you don't see the figure make a shot from the roof. Okay, so you probably heard all this before, but the direct evidence established 0, less than 0. It was counterproductive. It was a human was on a roof that eventually was fired from. Didn't show him firing. Didn't show it was even a he. Could have been Lance Twiggs as much as it could have been Tyler Robinson. Maybe I buy that. Maybe I buy the Patsy story. Maybe it was Tyler Robinson, but the video doesn't show it. So we need inferences, circumstantial evidence. Hopefully, if you take nothing away from today's episode, Sunday episode of Rules for Retrogrades, what you'll take away is never say that's just circumstantial evidence again. That's not real evidence. I don't know why TV and movies do this. What did you say? To Kill a Mockingbird. That's all circumstantial evidence that should have acquitted Tom Robinson. And in those days, there was almost only circumstantial evidence, besides, like we said, dusting for fingerprints.
Isn't it with science? Like as you know, the culture has moved to more and more towards more progressive science, then obviously we have the tools to give us more direct evidence. But like you had mentioned at the beginning of the show, there are many, like prosecution is not a new thing. Like we've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years before there was
jury trial comes from Greece.
Fingerprints, right? Or DNA or video evidence. Like people were convicted. It's surprising to me, all these people who have been, you know, saying, oh, this is just circumstantial evidence. I'm thinking, how do you think like anybody has been convicted before the modern scientific era? Yeah,
there's this Enlightenment empiricist bias. Let me look at the picture. Like I said, you doctors are encouraged to go in this direction, and it's really bad. Lawyers, luckily, are not being encouraged in law school to move further in this. Let me look at the evidence. If we have to make a human inference, then it's wrong. It's actually nominalistic. It's empiricist. It's a skeptic's point of view of the world, a post-Enlightenment view of the world, where you don't believe human inferences or the syllogism works. You don't believe humans have a nature and that they act a certain way under certain circumstances. And more than anything, the tendency toward demanding only direct material evidence tosses to the side the important fact of human life, that inferences are the most important thing that we can do, that our brains do, because we're made in the image and likeness of God. And we also know how to understand human behavior better than anything else. And technology lies, as it's done several times in the famous cases, including the pretrial to the Charlie Kirk case. But I promised a second aspect to this first third of the show, which is conspiracy. This term conspiracy, like the term evidence, you guys have been directly manipulated to believe that a conspiracy is something that the law never sustains, kind of like circumstantial evidence, and that if you say a conspiracy occurred here, then you're a kook. Okay, a conspiracy is one of the other first things you learn in crim law in your 1L year of law school. Conspiracy is anytime two or more persons contract, verbally or non-verbally, to enter into an agreement to commit a crime. They're very, very common for certain crimes, extremely common for some crimes. For political assassinations in particular, it's very rare, and this was a political assassination. We're getting back to the Charlie Kirk thing. I'm trying to wrap up the first third here. It's extremely rare in the history of the world that political assassinations occur by a lone assassin. Extremely rare. The vast majority of political assassinations are conspiracies of two or more, usually many parties. Think Caesar, 44 BC, dozens of senators. And not to be too Ollie Stone all up on your asses, but because that's really what the tragedy of JFK is. It is a kind of beautiful period piece played by Kevin Costner. My best friend's grandma worked as a secretary to Jim Garrison, who Costner plays in that movie. It's always been a favorite of mine since 6th grade. They elegize JFK in a really kind of poetic way that I don't like the artsy stuff, but I really do like. Kevin Costner says, as Jim Garrison, he's like Caesar. He's surrounded by those who claim to be friends, and they're all clamoring, beware the Ides of March, clamoring for the day of his death. The knives come out suddenly. Dozens of senators who are colleagues to Caesar, who work with Caesar. Famous sort of archetype for a political assassination. Abraham Lincoln, John Wilkes Booth, and many collaborators. A lot of them were Catholic. co-conspirators. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, multiple members of the Black Hand and Young Bosnia networks. 2 networks, hundreds of people, probably 1,000 people in on the Archduke Ferdinand killing. All right? That's a conspiracy. 2 or more contracting to do a political killing. Very rare, very suspicious anytime you hear a political assassination that's not a conspiracy. I'll keep going. Tsar Alexander II in 1881.
That's who I was going to say. Yep.
The Narodnya Volya terrorist organization, right? Socialists. Total big network of socialists who killed him. Dostoevsky, if he wouldn't have had his conversion, was on the road to being part of this organization. The greatest writer in the history of the world. Alexander I of Yugoslavia was killed by IMRO and Ustase's collaboration. 2 different terrorist networks. It's a conspiracy once there's 2 guys within one of those networks, let alone 2 entire networks. Political assassinations require conspiracies. I'll keep going. Yitzhak Rabin, 1995, generally regarded as a lone assassin, but people think it's impossible that even this was carried off by a lone assassin. This is like the one outlier in this list I put together, but people doubt it. Kind of like JFK, but everyone knows JFK now was a conspiracy of many, 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 whether you think it's the mob, whether he's mobbed up, whether or not it was the Cubans, whether or not it was the Soviets and the Cubans, whether or not it was Israel, whether or not it was the U.S. government on their own deep state. It was probably all of them. But what it definitely was not, even the U.S. House Committee re-looked at this in the late 90s and they said, no way it was a lone gunman. So JFK put in the definitely a conspiracy. I guess we'll find out in 11 years. Yeah, right. They're really going to release all the files in 11 years. Anwar Sadat, multiple Islamist military conspirators. Indira Gandhi, 1984, 2 bodyguards acting together. People think it's more than that. Rajiv Gandhi, 1991, LTTE, suicide bombing involving a whole organized cell. 9/11. Whether or not you think Israel had something to do with it, it was a conspiracy of at least 11 guys, right? At least 12 because of UBL. Do you get it? Political assassinations almost never happen with a lone gunman. Lee Harvey Oswald, John Wilkes Booth, those are just the names you know. These were patsies, and they represented a whole unnamed interest, a faceless interest, in many cases a deep state. But I read you a whole list of them. I can't think of a political assassination that I actually believe that even the mainstream account would have you believe was a lone gunman. Yes, a lot of burglary style robberies turned murders are one person, a crackhead that breaks into another crackhead's home and kills him, or a crackhead robs a crackhead on the street and he was out of his mind and didn't plan anything out longer than a minute ahead of time, and it was just a one guy. Murders can happen without conspiracies. The black on black crime. Sometimes that's gang violence. That's a conspiracy, by the way. But non-gang black on black crime, when it's just a couple of crackheads on the street, yeah, those are murders that are lone gunmen or lone knife men or lone, I don't know, like super punchers or however you killed the guy. Those murders can happen. But political assassinations should be first regarded as conspiracies, which is a legal term. It's a legal thing. There's a merger doctrine for if you're part of a conspiracy, the conspiracy at some point merges into the crime because it's a separate offense. But it merges into the crime if we're talking a felony, an inherently dangerous felony. And merger doctrine just proves that conspiracies are very real and a very prominent part of a whole genre of murder. Political assassinations, anything called an assassination, Charlie Kirk definitely fits there, is almost always a conspiracy of more than one. So you're just being mind swiped, man. You're just being brainwashed, okay? So evidence is almost always circumstantial, and there is much circumstantial evidence I'm about to get to that is to say, evidence requiring an inference, which humans are exceptionally good at, that Israel's involved in this thing, that we need to look more and look deeper. Then the circumstantial evidence gets more convincing, the deeper you're allowed to look. A Terry stop on the road is a cop. He only has to have reasonable suspicion. To arrest you, he's got to have probable cause. That's a little bit more facts he's got on his side. To convict you at law, it's got to be beyond a reasonable doubt. That's when there's more fact-finding involved. So that's even further than probable cause. You see how you sniff something out, you get a stink, an investigator. Look a little more, you find a little more compelling stuff. Look deeper then, you go deeper in the process. You find more compelling stuff. Eventually, it's enough to prove, and you prove with circumstantial evidence most of the time in serious criminal trials. And then the other half of this first part is that conspiracies are absolutely real. They're very common. They're very common in non-emergent murders. They're the vast majority of non-emergent murders, and certainly the vast majority of assassinations and political assassinations, meaning it ought to be the first thing you look at. Also, I learned this on the second day of law school. Spouses are always the first suspect. Once the investigator, county counsel, and others decide this is probably foul play, check out the spouse first. They're probably clean, but whatever. The last takeaway is material evidence actually does require inferences. And if you have material evidence, but not a lot of circumstantial evidence, you're going to get the answer wrong. People are like, how? If there's a recording or a videotape, how? If there's DNA evidence, fingerprints, how? Richard Kimball's wife's, had his skin under there, and she seemed to utter his name on a recording to 911 as her attacker. That lies often. So there's not a lot of circumstantial evidence why anyone would do a political assassination on his own. And that's what this was. That's where there's just not a lot of evidence. This moves us into examining what some of the evidence is, in fact. And here's the thing. This wasn't the first thing I noticed in the case. The first thing I noticed was what a weirdo. And I don't mean just bizarre cuckoo. I mean weird, suspicious behaviors Erica Kirk evinced. Weird, suspicious behaviors with means motive opportunity doesn't mean she's guilty, right? But this is the hair standing up on the back of your neck if you've been naive about it until now. It looks like, it feels like, and after almost a year, it has been like regime change of the kind Ollie Stone describes in JFK. That requires us to talk about the Catholic timeline. What you guys, the parish orphans and retrogrades out there, should understand, I think you do if you watch this show with any regularity, is that a conversion from evangelical Protestantism to Roman Catholicism is a theological conversion that is a conceptual stalking horse for other propositions representing conversions as well. You're going to have different point of view on Mary, the Blessed Virgin, the Mother of God. You're going to start sounding more like a Catholic or an Orthodox, and you're going to regard her widely differently. Mary, evangelical Protestants, they seem to thrive saying really nasty things about her. Just go listen to that one. Who's that one hoe on Twitter that's always just talking smack? Steffi, what's her name? Farming in Jesus or something?
She was like a literal like sex worker, right?
I think.
Yeah.
Well, that, in our opinion, in our limited exposure.
No, I think there was a post that was her that she was admitting that she was like a pole dancer.
Yeah, pole dancer, whatever. We don't care about that. The point is that the evangelical Protestants are going to, if you convert to Roman Catholicism, because like Scott Hahn, you realize the first 300 years of Christianity was apostolic, sacralized church Christianity, ecclesial Christianity. You got to be either Catholic or Orthodox once you just look at history. Then you're also going to start regarding Mary differently. And then you're going to start regarding the 7 sacraments differently. And then you're going to start regarding the concept of priesthood very differently. You'll go from all believers are priests to this is a special ordained class, a higher vocational calling. And then you're going to believe what we believe about one notch higher bishops and one notch lower deacons. But also, It's a stalking horse, a conversion from evangelicalism to Roman Catholicism about what the word Israel means here below in 2026. What the word Israel has meant from, let's say, 34 AD onward. What Israel meant when Jesus spoke of it. It's the church. It's not this kinky, perverted, satanic place in the Middle East, the most secular leftist country in the history of the world. That country, they just named themselves Israel to hoodwink evangelicals, Zionists, dispensationalists. So when you become Catholic from evangelical Protestant, there is a conceptual stalking horse conversion that co-attends your religious conversion that is very circumstantially close, conceptually close. And that change means you're going to start regarding Israel, political Israel, not as a friend, but generally as a foe. You're going to look at Judaism more largely, not as a friend, but as a foe. You'll still see it as an older brother, but more an older brother like Cain. More an older brother like the murderous squanderers of inheritance in the Old Testament. You're not going to look at it as you kindly, loving older brother like Jonathan Byers in Stranger Things. It's going to mean older brother. This guy squandered his inheritance and then tried to murder me because of my offering at the altar. So you're going to reverse your position when you become a knowledgeable Catholic. I don't mean a typical boomer Catholic. I mean either a smart boomer Catholic or an everyone else Catholic. You're going to realize Israel is kind of the enemy. The Catholic Church is the good guy throughout history. Israel is the modern enemy of the Catholic Church and of peoples of goodwill. And you're going to have a 180-degree change when you go from an evangelical to a Catholic. And that is, in fact, what was going on with Charlie. I'm going to share his timeline for Catholicism right now.
What's interesting about what you just said was I think Candace has done a very good job, at least establishing that Charlie Kirk was not a big fan of the Jews, at least right before he died. All the text messages, I think, are establishing that pretty well. So that was kind of, it seems to me, and this is, of course, speculation, but most of the time people come into the church and then they change on the Israel question after they've converted.
Yeah.
It seems like he was already there pre-conversion and he was coming in, obviously he's learning more about the faith, but it seemed like he was pretty solid on that point even prior to his conversion, which maybe was one of the reasons why he wanted to convert to the Catholic faith, but who knows? I
think it was all happening at once. There were still moments of dithering, but a fortiori, when you become Catholic, then you have the theological basis for saying that's why Israel is actually the Catholic Church, not this tranny, LGBT hellscape that psyops the rest of the world in the Middle East. That's why. Let's go to.
I'll put that tweet up, the one that you did earlier on the Catholicism.
Yes, but Charlie I need Kirk. The one
that Charlie Kirk was becoming Catholic.
Yeah, what are those 5 things? Okay, would you read those?
Sure.
Here's the timeline.
Number 1, Charlie Kirk had a spiritual confidant and director.
He basically had a spiritual director. I know his name. I know all this from off-record stuff that was told to me as a priest in that area. I'm not going to say who he is. We won't call him a spiritual director just so we don't overpromise and underdeliver. Let's just call him a spiritual confidant. And okay, go on.
Number 2, Charlie Kirk had a Catholic funeral and burial at St. Bernadette Catholic Church.
All of this centers on St. Bernadette Catholic Church in that area, in Greater Phoenix area. Now, the burial and the funeral is a controversial topic, but he did have trappings of a Catholic funeral / burial, okay, with this priest that he worked with in St. Bernadette. Okay, next.
Charlie Kirk had a devotional Marian shift sometime between February 2025 debate with Michael Knowles and April-May 2025 and prayed the rosary regularly.
Okay, yeah, so let's have a look, shall we, at February 2025. I remember we were doing our taxes And I was watching Michael Knowles debate his friend, Charlie Kirk, on Catholic Protestantism stuff. And Charlie was doing, I think, pretty well. I think he was making his points sound more compelling than they can ever really be for Protestantism. And Michael was being really friendly. And I thought, man, Charlie's really anti-Catholic. That was February 2025. And I remember taxes. Interesting. Said a lot of he said Mary was one of his stumbling blocks, right? He named 3. Well, by April, he published a piece saying that Protestants they had an issue with Mary, and that was weird, and that the solution to toxic feminism is the Virgin Mary. And he's saying, we Protestants need to get more into Mary. We've got an issue with her. So he was being converted, and I have been making calls every which way. John Yep of Catholic for Catholics, who is there in town. Jesse Romero, who's in there in town. I spoke to him recently. They're all saying, yep, no pun intended. Charlie was going to daily mass and was getting into Mary. He was even developing a Marian devotion between February and April, to the point where he was beginning a rosary devotion. Okay, next. So he was getting over that between February and April, those 2 months when he published his piece on Mary as the solution to feminism.
Number 4, Charlie Kirk's Easter Vigil sermon involves his newfound enthusiastic participation in Catholic liturgy.
So he gives an Easter Vigil, and thanks to John Yep, who's helped me with these points, they're mainly his. He gives an Easter Vigil sermon in 2025, and he's talking about the need for liturgy. He's following the Catholic liturgical calendar. He is sounding fully, go listen to it. He sounds Catholic there. Okay, next. Thank you.
Number 5, John Yep. Final interaction was a fist bump in daily mass sometime after Leo became Pope, during which conclave John did coverage for Charlie Kirk's show.
Yeah, so 2 things here that is shared with me by John Yep. Late spring, early summer of 2025, which is this very transformative time for Charlie, was the last time I think John said he saw Charlie at daily mass. There was traveling by one or both of them involved at some point. But he fist bumped, when Charlie had to leave after the liturgy of the word on this particular mass, but they fist bumped and they said, keep going or whatever. Also, John Yep, this is just a historical hilarity. During the conclave, which was May, right? The next month, May 2025. Yeah, Steffi? May 2025. John Yep was the Rome correspondent for the Charlie Kirk show. He was the man, the boots on the ground there in Rome during the conclave coverage, which gave us Leo the 14th. It so happens my boots on the ground correspondent in Rome that I did a show with him was George Farmer. So John Yep was working for Charlie. George Farmer was kind enough to do a show with me from there. So it's just kind of a ships passing in the night thing. But the point is, Charlie was very interested in it. He was becoming increasingly Catholic. And let's look at the timeline. Let's go to the timeline in that other tweet. So we got all that out. There is a September, I believe, 18th or 19th piece by, this is under 10 days after Charlie was assassinated. Would you zero in on the John Yep stuff there?
Oh, yes.
There is a piece in September. There's a piece about 8 days after he's assassinated by Joseph Brennan's brother, Bishop Joseph Brennan, my old bishop's brother,
Yes.
who said that on September the 2nd, that is 8 days before he was assassinated, Charlie said, I'm this close, or I'm very close to becoming Catholic. Sorry. What you also need to know is that this has effectually been covered up by TPUSA and silenced by Erica. I don't know if you could say covered up by her. It's been covered up and lied about by TPUSA people, but it's been lied about. And by Erica, it's just been totally silenced. I mean, she's a Catholic, right? Why would she not be saying, yeah, Charlie was becoming Catholic? You want him to go to heaven.
Faith is a huge portion of the TPUSA brand. You know, so for me, it would make sense that they would talk more about this.
Right.
If they, if they were trying not to talk about it.
Well, they're trying not to talk about it for the other proposition stood for by his conversion. Would you read the little timeline there on the John Yep thing?
Sure. So John Yep, and I'm sure we'll go through all this, but Charlie Kirk's
because we're just doing Catholic timeline. We'll zoom back out and do the whole Israel timeline after this.
Gotcha. Okay, so John Yep on Charlie Kirk's theological shift, according to Yep. Summer 2025, approximately June to July, Yep says Charlie began asking deeper questions about Catholic theology, church history, and the relationship between Christianity and Israel.
It was around this time, I believe, that my friend, good friend, Jesse Romero, had a conversation there, because Jesse's in the Phoenix area, with Charlie. And Charlie said, I'm very interested. One of my main stumbling blocks, he'd apparently overcome one of those stumbling blocks, being married. The other two are stood by the proposition of ecclesiology. He really needed to understand the way the church's morphology, ecclesiologically speaking. So he asked Jesse, can you give me a good book? And Jesse said, read my book. And Jesse gave it to him. Jesse thought, I don't know if he'd swear by it on a stand, but he thought that Charlie had read it. I think he said he called a week later, talked to someone identifying as Charlie's secretary.
That's what I remember the conversation. I remember Jesse saying that
and
he
it was
gave
read.
The book. Yeah.
It was read.
And that the secretary confirmed that he had read the book.
Right. Okay. So next, so that I think is maybe that late spring, early summer period. Now go to the July to August period. Charlie was changing the status quo, which is a very dangerous thing to do when you've been in bed, I'm sorry to say, with the evangelical Zionist Israel lobby. When you're mobbed up, it's dangerous to come correct, right? And that's the sad part about this. It's Julius Caesar. It's called a tragedy by Shakespeare for a reason.
July to August 2025, conversations intensified. Yep describes Kirk as increasingly questioning dispensationalism and political Zionism while becoming more interested in Catholicism.
Okay, so you see the critique is sharpening, August through September. Remember, that conversation testified to by a moderate, not far right retrograde bishop, one who fired the OG retrograde himself, Joseph Brennan. Brennan said on September 2nd, he had this conversation and he promises that Charlie Kirk said, I'm this close to becoming Catholic.
So that's the last one. About a week before September 10th, 2025, separately from Yep, Bishop Joseph Brennan's brother reported that the bishop recalled Charlie saying that he was, quote, this close to becoming Catholic during a private conversation.
So about a week, meaning September the 2nd. I actually found that date between the time I made this timeline and now. What's the last one?
That's it. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. No. That's it for the John Yep thing, I believe.
Okay, cool. So if you buy that, once again, Roman Catholicism is at the center of everything, then you'll find that even Catholics who surrounded Charlie, like his wife, like others, I've mentioned some of their names here tonight, are being told or telling others, don't press this Catholic thing. It's not right to talk about what religion someone is. What? What are you talking about? It's completely relevant. Not only that, you can kind of proselytize and sermonize about how it's important to know everyone's religion and try to make it a positive thing. It's important because of the precise conceptual closeness to the Israel question. We need to know this is a criminal trial, right? There's a man's life at stake here, whether he's a guilty patsy, maybe, or totally framed, maybe, I don't know. We got to get to justice. And so, yeah, of course it's okay to talk about someone who told a bishop who's inherently a public figure and who published an article about it. Yeah, I'm this close to converting. What Protestants are obsessed with Mary? What Protestants say the rosary? What Protestants go to daily mass? What Protestants say I'm about to convert? What Protestants have a spiritual advisor? To a bishop. Get out of town. So let's take this back for just the briefest moment to the circumstantial evidence question. This is a bunch of circumstantial evidence, right? It's a couple inferences away from you know, the real tender spot from the nerve. It's a couple inferences, not just one. Catholicism from evangelicalism means you're changing your view on Israel. Now, can we substantiate that he actually was changing his views on Israel? Oh, yes. We're about to get to that. But it was all happening at once. As you go from being an evangelical to a Catholic, aside from generally just becoming a non-retard, right? And I would say the same thing if he was going, I told Jay Dyer this yesterday when I was like, Jay, what do you think of this, man? And Jay's a lot closer to where I'm at, but he can speak for himself on it. I was like, I would say the same thing if he was going from evangelical Protestantism to Orthodoxy, right? You're getting out of retard country, even if we think the Orthodox are wrong. You're getting into apostolic Christianity, kind of smartified Christianity. So you get that. You get a plus there. You get a check there, let's say. You're getting into, you can actually receive the sacraments, so you can make it to heaven. Big check there. Check, check, check. And then you're going to view Israel differently. You're going to say Israel is the church. It's not that place full of perverts in the Middle East that starts almost all the world's wars. Sorry, my Mel Gibson retarded caveman mode was kicking in there. All the world's wars, whatever. You're going to have a different view on Israel. So yes, those are the different inferences that play out. And here's the thing. Can that be sustained if we look at Charlie's actual timeline with regard to his collateral, coaxial changing views on Israel itself? Let's zoom out to that timeline, shall we? The broader timeline. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can we zoom to a place where,
yeah.
Can you see? Because I can't see it. Yeah. Well, I guess I can get it on my phone here.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you read it from your phone, I can just scroll down as you go.
All right. Fair enough. So this is really important. This is really, really important. Oh, you're there. There we're it's like we just said that. Deja vu all over. Yeah, that me.
I booked it.
All right. Cool. All right. So what was going on? Now we did the Catholic timeline. Now let's do its rival, the Israel timeline. Late July, early August 2025, Baron Coleman, who's actually, I think, a Catholic, did a really good job, but this is quite important. In July-ish, through the next month, he found Israel IP searches that were searching out the name Tyler Robinson and related terms. Coleman presented data and analysis from Google Trends and other tools, other software, showing searches from Israel for Tyler Robinson, who had no notoriety in the world at that point before September 10th, 2025, and related terms, hospitals, the surgeons at that hospital that would likely be on call, lawyers, officials, I think rifles, in late July and early August. There's evidence of this search activity, but the source, methodology, and attribution are, of course, disputed, okay? Not independently proven. Most of the stuff on my timeline is independently proven. All right, let's move to August 4th, 2025. So this is from Israel. You have these weird IP searches for Tyler Robinson. Oh, probably everyone gets searched. Every loser, twink 20-year-old who's led this very bizarre private interior life and has no reason to be in the public eye. Probably everyone gets those searches from Israel, right? No, I hope I'm not at this point. That's not good. August the 4th, 2025. There was something called the Hamptons intervention, the gathering with Bill Ackman, one of the most rich, most powerful Israel lobby Americans. Charlie Kirk attended the gathering hosted by him, Bill Ackman, in the Hamptons. Later accounts characterized it as an Israel-related intervention, like, Charlie, you're turning against Israel. Don't do that, Charlie. But Ackman himself, who did say the meeting happened on August the 4th, denied, you're going to never believe this, he denied that he threatened him or blackmailed him. Yeah. That's where you need physical evidence, material evidence. So the meetings confirmed the characterization of what happened is disputed, but generally an intervention of this sort is not friendly. Now, it could be collegial and it could be diplomatic, So you keep your friends close and your enemies closer. This is the idea. But what happens next in my timeline, and I made this timeline myself, I mean, using AI, but I gathered all these events. I'm like, people need to communicate basically with a visual timeline what was going on.
This
Charlie
is on
was
Twitter if you guys want to see it more fully.
He was converting to Catholic and he was converting to anti-Israel. On August the 13th, 2025, Steph, I've been talking about this for 2 weeks nonstop. And I think only yesterday, I guess sometimes you tune out a Jabberbox or whatever. No. Only yesterday you were like, wait, this August the 13th, 2025 tweet by Harrison Smith, who's agreed to come on the show. I was hoping to do it tonight. I don't know when I'll have him on. I'll have John Yep on too, when I get back from the little staycation or vacation or whatever. Harrison Smith posts this on X, Twitter. I was told by someone close to Charlie Kirk that Charlie thinks Israel will kill him if he turns against them. Full stop.
That you can still find on.
It's up.
It's
Twitter. Live. It's not. You didn't know this as of yesterday, right?
I don't know why when you were telling me about this, I assumed that he had posted that after Charlie had died. But then
no, that wouldn't have been probative.
That would not have been obviously evidentiary.
Federal rules of evidence, something like this. If you go, you know what? I think my neighbor's going to kill me if I cut down the hedge between our houses. The cops get a lot of threats that are unsubstantiated, and they go, yeah, right, cool, man. But if, let's say, I don't know, 26 days after you say this, you cut down your hedge. And then 2 days after that, 28 days after you publicly posted something on X saying, my neighbor will kill me if I cut down my hedge. After you cut down the hedge, then 2 days later you get killed. They're going to think the neighbor did it. That's evidence. That's extremely probative circumstantial evidence. I'm using the federal rules of evidence, by the way, literally the FRE. That's that time evidence, which is, in this case, it's double hearsay. Because it's not Harrison Smith saying Charlie says, it's Harrison Smith saying some guy said Charlie Smith said. So it's double hearsay, but it's extremely probative double hearsay. This is not, we'll look at that too. That makes Israel number one. 28 days before he's killed, 26 days after he posts this, he throws the kill switch, the conditional, the if X, then Y. He throws the X switch. And then 2 days later, Y happens. Actually, Candace corrected me on Twitter, and she said, actually, it was the day before he actually died. So 27 days later is this big 9-part text convo where he actually kind of tells the Israel tattletales like Josh Hammer, who has deep connections to Israel. I've debated Josh Hammer in person. He's the most unpleasant human being I've ever interacted with, besides like a raving crackhead.
It's so true.
He's a smart guy.
He's a
smart, skeevy little Jew. He's also like 3'7". And Dave Smith, I think a very good Jew, one of my favorite Jews. Dave Smith said, that guy's a snake, man. I debated him twice. He was cordial. The minute the debate came on, he said, I'm disgusted to be on the stage. He literally said, I'm disgusted to be on the stage with a Jew who doesn't support Israel. You should be disgusted with yourselves for supporting Dave Smith. Dave's like, dude, this guy is a snake, man. He's a snake. That's how he was when I debated him. And it got nasty. It was the most discourteous debate I've ever engaged in. And he's an important figure, this Josh Hammer, because if you look at...
So that Harrison Smith post, that was August 13th, by the way. And if you would like to, feel free, go on Twitter. You can see that right now.
Yeah, I've retweeted it. In the last 2 weeks, I've retweeted with a comment.
Yeah.
Okay, Harrison Smith post, keep little Josh Hammer at the front of your mind, because he just keeps getting more and more relevant. August 27th-ish, maybe 26th, maybe 28th, Bibi Netanyahu calls to invite Charlie to what might have been, it's a visit, might have been like the Hamptons intervention that Bill Ackman couldn't succeed with, because Charlie was saying, you saw Candace's released tweets now, he was saying these people can go to hell or whatever. The Jewish donors, they fill all the tropes. They try to bully me. I'm off board with Israel. All this is happening. And now Bibi Netanyahu is calling him. Let's imagine a frantic call. And he invites him 2 weeks before September 10th, around August 27th, and he invites him to Israel. Then we have all of the kind of revisitation of these same months as per John Yep with regard to Charlie's Catholic conversion. But let's jump to September. It says September 8th. It's been called September 8th many times. Candace told me as of yesterday, it's September 9th. Screenshots of a multi-part text conversation that everyone was saying, oh, Candace is lying. This didn't happen. She waited a few days, then produced it. Shows Charlie Kirk telling associates, including Josh Hammer, little Josh Hammer, that he would no longer support the pro-Israel cause under the current conditions because they're trying to bully him. 2 attempted interventions at this point, potentially. Hamptons and Israel, Bibi. This is confirmed. Andrew Colvett said it happened. Candace showed the tweets. Josh Hammer admitted it happened. Now, I guess I have this on the next day. This is evening time, September the 9th, but I guess the September 8th thing was September the 9th too. 2 more things happen. Actually, 3 more things happen. One's not on there. So go to the gold, September the 9th evening. There is a separate call, a Zoom call, I think after the multi-part text convo, with Rabbi Pesach Walicki and Josh Hammer. Oh, Pesach Walicki, the Jew rabbi, was one of the other presumed participants in the text convo. So, you know, one of those things where you're in a 9-part text convo, Charlie's saying anti-Israel stuff that Pesach and little Joshua Hammer are not going to be happy with. And then they hop on a Zoom call, presumably afterwards. Now, Walicki said he spoke with Kirk for about an hour. He admitted it was Israel related, but he said it was very friendly. I'm sure people can't lie, right? He said it was about Israel, but it was how Kirk can deal with Israel related questions. Really? So you just have this confirmed text conversation, Josh Hammer, Pesach Walicki, the rabbi, and Charlie Kirk, and he just dropped the bomb on you. Got to be careful. No pun intended. This is Israel we're dealing with. That I'm not going to support Israel anymore. I am the most important person for Israel in America, maybe of any age in America, because I've supported them like a little goy. I'm sad to say Charlie supported them for many years, and TPUSA is like multi-billion-dollar industry because they supported Israel. Now I'm reversing course. And now Bill Ackman's trying to intervene. And now Bibi Netanyahu might be trying to intervene. And now Pesach Walicki, the rabbi, and Josh Hammer are on this text conversation like, we got to call him. And they're admitting that they spoke about Israel. But they're saying it was fun. How is it fun? He just had a text convo with you saying that he's off board. I don't like Israel anymore. I'm not going to support him anymore. They're bullies. What did he say? All the tropes are true of Jewish donors?
I believe that was a Candace tweet as well. He said all the stereotypes are true.
Yeah, and she released that. So we have, they're just admitting too much, Josh Hammer and Pesach Walicki. They said, yeah, we did talk about Israel, but it was happy. It was good. It was just about how to deal with questions. What do you mean? Could it have been at most like, how do you deal with questions, Josh Hammer, at TPUSA? Look at me. I think this is really interesting, right? Look, you just told us you don't like Israel anymore. Could you, Charlie, could you pump the brakes on telling people that at your college events? Don't you think it was at the very least like that? Mm-hmm. Think about that. You just had the text conversation. Yeah. They admit we're talking about Israel. They weren't saying they were talking about the, NBA playoffs, 25 playoffs, who's going to take it down. They're talking about Israel, and they're saying specifically how to deal with Israel questions. They were probably talking, I'd give it 90%, probably more aggressive than this, but at least they're talking at the register of, hey, CK, you just told us you don't like Israel. Everyone expects you to. You lead this Zionist evangelical Israel bootlicking organization that has raised billions of dollars for yourselves and billions for Israel, presumably. How are you going to deal with everyone starting to realize that now you're this Israel disliking Catholic? That's probably what they were talking about. Now, here's
and also, like Candace just recently released more text messages where Charlie Kirk is saying, "quote I've told all the Jews recently to go to hell.
real.
Try to tell me to stop. Screw these people."
Real. Do we have a date on those?
I'm gonna look at that right now.
Candace or George, if you're watching, text me if you have a date on those. I maybe she hasn't wanted to, but any Candace or George, if you're watching or whatever.
Oh, this is what he said, by the way, that the text about they play into all the stereotypes. This is what Charlie Kirk said. He said, Jewish donors play into all the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause.
Okay. Yeah. But then the more recent ones were like, he's like, I told them all to go to hell. Now, September the 9th, 2025. This is most of this stuff is not Candace centric. Here's a Candace claim that I believe. It's her word versus Erica Kirk. I said what I said about jury trials. P's going to say one thing. D's going to say the opposite. This is a classic instance. If you are the jury and we're competing for your hearts and minds, actually not me, Erica and Candace. Erica says Charlie's phone didn't. I have his phone. Why didn't the FBI take it, by the way? I have his phone, and he did not send a signal text. He did not send a WhatsApp text saying they're going to kill me tomorrow. Tomorrow being September the 10th when they did kill him. They being, we know who they are. Not Tyler Robinson, who thinks a tranny is going to kill him in fucking Utah.
By the way, the date for that text message was, I believe, November 15th, 2023.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Cause cause he had, wow. That's
the tweet or the text to Candace saying, I've told all the Jews recently to go to hell who try to tell me to stop. Screw these people. November 15th, 2023.
That seems early, but he was in 2023. What happened? October 7th. And I couldn't believe it. So this throws off our timeline a bit because I'm backtracking. October 7th, 2023. The first person I heard saying that it was an Israel-led false flag was Charlie Kirk. October 7th turned that guy around. But he was a really slow thing because he's got this complex situation. He built a whole multi-billion corporation on bootlicking for Israel. He'd done all the dirty work for Israel. He'd had the wrong position, the position of being a retard evangelical. He's a smart guy. God bless his soul. But he'd done a lot of the devil's work. And so of course, even though he started disputing, questioning, suspecting Israel was good around October 7th, 2023, with that whole false flag event, it took him a while. Okay. So now we're talking, I guess that's not that long before. That's what date? It's still less than 2 years before. No, okay.
November 15th, 2023.
Okay. But fast forward. So we're still on September 9th, 2025, the day before he died. Candace says there's a text. It's from Signal, not WhatsApp, where I don't know who he texted. It wasn't her. Somehow she knew on his phone it should still be there. He said, they're going to kill me tomorrow. I'm worried they're going to kill me tomorrow. Erica Kirk, according to Candace, when they had their December summit, again, correct me if I'm wrong. Feel free to text me, Candace or George. They had a December summit, and Erica said, there's no WhatsApp chat saying that. I checked, Candace. And Candace was like, it was Signal, not WhatsApp. Now, I might be getting some stuff wrong. This is literally the best I know it now. I'm open to being corrected. But then, according to Candace, I believe Erica Kirk got out his phone or did it later, but I think it was right there, checked Signal, found him saying, they're going to get me tomorrow. They're going to kill me tomorrow. Tyler Robinson, GTFO, man. Now, something else happens on September the 9th that is not on this timeline, and it's a very fascinating thing. It's a retweet it's a retweet from, I think, 2014 by none other than little hateful Josh Hammer. And it's a Trump retweet that made absolutely zero, I'm talking a cipher, sense, made straws worth of sense unless it's connected with the events of the next day.
Do we have that on Twitter? Do you want me to show
On
that?
public assassinations, yes, it's on September the 9th. I'm just doing a quick search for this thing.
Oh, here I have it right here.
You got it?
Yeah.
You want to read that?
Let me get it up on the screen for everybody.
Josh Hammer did retweet, more precisely, he quote tweeted a very old Donald post-Trump from 2013, from April 19, 2013, September 9th, 2025, the day before Charlie Woods died, after Josh had talked to him 2-3 times that day about Israel. And the Trump tweet read, what was it?
So this is ND Times, and they say, and then Josh Hammer posted about public executions after the Zoom call with Charlie, and then again on the day Charlie was publicly executed. If there was a proper investigation, he would have at least been brought in for questioning and his phone seized. So Josh Hammer on September 9th retweeted Donald Trump, and Donald Trump said on Twitter, should be
12 years before. April 19th, 2013. He went and found this. What did the Trump tweet?
So Josh Hammer on September 9th, 2025 found a April 19th, 2013 Donald Trump tweet, retweeted it, and this is what Donald Trump said. Should be public execution for all to see. You will end this bullshit fast. And then Josh Hammer said on that retweet, based. So he was saying that Donald Trump was based. So he found this old Trump tweet, retweeted this. This is what the day before Charlie Kirk was killed?
Yep.
Okay.
Public execution.
So then public execution, he just tweeted on September 10th, 2020, the day Charlie Kirk was killed. So.
Okay, wait. So what about the tweet the day of, though? What about Hammer's bizarre tweet the next day? And yeah, you're not going to, this is strong circumstantial evidence of some Caesarean type plot, right? What about his bizarre tweet the next day? You said it just said, what? Public execution. This is his friend, Charlie Kirk. And he did another tweet, September the 10th. Was this before or after Charlie Kirk? The tweet that drew the most attention after the assassination was not the September 9th public execution quote tweet, but Hammer's reaction on September 10th after Charlie Kirk had been killed. According to archived X posts and later reporting, Hammer wrote, "We all just witnessed a public execution." He said based about Trump the day before saying public execution. That's unusual, because he had quote tweeted the day before Trump's old public execution post with based. This wasn't an execution. This was an assassination. Execution's done by who? The state. He wanted people to know. He knew he would be immune later. Who does an assassination? An enemy of the state. Who does an execution? The fucking state does. This is important. And again, if you think what you think this is stretching, we all just witnessed a public execution less than 24 hours after he had dug through 12 years of Trump tweets. I mean, do you know how chilling that is? And you've met this guy. You hated this guy when we met him. Steph and I tend to like people when we meet him. We did not like this little man. Icy cold little dude. And he repeated that off wording when he said based about public executions on September. I mean, do you guys does anybody want to call in and debate me on this? This is circumstantial evidence out the wazoo.
I remember I didn't like him. Sorry for my canned voice, by the way. I'm over here with the baby. But I remember I didn't like him because he was bragging that he was like in a hotel room with his girlfriend. And I was like, this guy's an unmarried creep. Like, just bragging that he's just having like premarital sex. What a douche.
Oh yeah,
that's not like him at all. Yeah.
But he's since married.
Yeah, he married her. But I remember like before the debate, he was bragging that he and his like girlfriend, like they were both unmarried, were like having relations or whatever. I was just like, this guy is a tool.
Josh Hammer's wife is Sheer Cohen. publicly available information indicates that she is from Israel. Hammer proposed to her at the Western Wall in Jerusalem.
Oh my gosh.
In December 2022, and they married in December 2023. So when did I debate him? It was right around that time.
Yeah.
Beyond, okay. So that's something. He married an Israeli national. Do you think he has dual ties? All right, so that's what we call a lot. A lot. This is from a guy with a JD. Crim law is not hard. It's easier than people think. It's not harder than people think. Evidence is more capacious than what people think. People think only, perfect fresh semen, fresh blood, fresh saliva, and a perfect, 4D videotape of a murder. That's the only way people are convicted. No, evidence is this stuff. Evidence, Erica Kirk is a big fat pile of evidence. She is a big bloated faced pile of evidence. And here's the thing. If you're saying to me, Tim, should you really mock a grieving widow? Here's what I would say. I've never and would never mock a grieving widow. We're not talking about one. We're talking about a widow who didn't grieve. And if you don't know, you should go watch JP Sears' video on Erica Kirk. Actually, he's kind of role playing. It's hilarious in a dark way. But Erica Kirk, 6 or 7 days after Charlie dies, she is just ecstatic. It's after that funeral where she's in the pleather pants, setting off the fireworks or whatever, flying around the stage. And it's supposed to be a private call, which is telling, with TPUSA board members. She's saying, we just pulled off the event of the century. She's
about
thrilled.
Emojis, talking about hat sales.
Using a note, she goes, our hat sales, we made so much money in hats alone. And people are like, she's like, you guys, if you're sad about Charlie, I'm so sorry for you. But my husband is dead. Not to be morbid, but he's dead. She's like consoling others. When Thomas Jefferson's wife died, he retired to his private library, passed out, and was like, couldn't go interact with the rest of his family for 3 weeks. That's a grieving spouse. That's someone who loves their spouse. You pass out. You have to be put on fluids. You have to be drugged. I don't want to find out what that's like, but I can tell you that's what I would be like. Okay? This lady 6 days later is ecstatic. She's having the time of her life. This is a celebrity whore who wanted celebrity for decades before. Ties to Israel. And it's all very confusing. There's like 5 stories. This comes from, I was just talking about this with John. Yeah. Like 5 stories of the way they met. But one of the main stories, the way that Charlie and Erica met, was on an Israel trip. Ties to Epstein, or at least Epstein's holding co. Ties to Ukraine. Ties to a creepy modeling agency. Have
you noticed too that since everybody has kind of been on the same team that Erica's weird and the way she grieves is inappropriate, they've stopped pumping her out as much?
Yeah, it only took them 5 months.
Ever since the White House shooting at the Correspondents' Dinner when they had that active shooter, and she left. She took off from there. We haven't really seen her that much.
Yeah.
So somebody clearly told her, like, people are not connecting with the way you've gone about things.
Yeah. So you and I agree, my gentle listener, that we do not like people who attack grieving widows. Well, I hate them. I hate people that attack grieving widows. You know who else I hate, though? Is people that might kill their spouses. Might have killed their spouses. Well, I guess I hate people that did kill their spouses, but I'm just saying, when a spouse, whether a widow or a widower, doesn't grieve for their fallen deceased spouse, this is one of the foremost, most obvious, mildly observances that you can say, that person's weird. And then when, like in Ollie Stone's JFK, the first acts of Erica Kirk are to supplant her husband, and she was installed there. They wanted her there, and to do precisely the opposite muscle motion as to what he was doing. He was doing this. He was getting ready to complete a bicep curl, right?
Under the guise of, and this was genius. Like,
But
she's the widow.
Down the other way.
And she's the widow. She knows what he would want. So let's trust this proxy. You know, I mean, come on.
Yeah, under the idea that she had diplomatic immunity, they overshot their mark. They overshot their mark. They always do. They always overshoot their mark because she is such a weirdo. She's such a bad actress. I see why she was a failed actress, right? I see why she's a failed model, because she's bad at it. She's unlikable. Her face is irritating and her tears are fake and everything she does is fake. And she didn't mourn her husband. I mean, look, you can get me a tissue. I don't try to act because I'm not an actor, but I can dab my eyes as much as I want. That doesn't mean I'm crying. Maybe you get a little hand from getting, some teardroppers or whatever, but that doesn't mean you're crying. We see you behind the scenes when we weren't supposed to. Because remember, a TPUSA person leaked that video. She was ecstatic. So this is all very bizarre. Or is it? It's actually not very bizarre because I've studied criminal law. I've studied actual conspiracies at law. I've looked a lot over the last 2 weeks at various political assassinations. I rewatched JFK. I know what a coup d'etat looks like. Regime change. They can be governmental regime changes or they can be paragovernmental regime changes. And this was the latter category, if I'm correct. Now, you still have to evidence a lot of this. You got to build a case around more general circumstantial evidence, and using mostly circumstantial evidence, you're going to have to get to more specific stuff. But that's why we need Lance Twiggs to not be allowed as hearsay evidence in court. We need to see the man. We need juries to be able to watch him. We need Erica Kirk. We need to know, why did Kash Patel shut down the basic questions that Joe Kent was asking? Joe Kent was asking this. Why did Benny Johnson say, do we have that video of Benny Johnson saying, this looks like state action? I've been told by people close to Charlie that this could be a conspiracy state action. Then he completely flip-flopped.
We do have a video of some former TPUSA employees. It's a very short clip that I did want you to respond to.
Yeah, sure.
If we can play that real quick.
Yeah, play that.
Okay, so I'll just read it. So Matt Tuccarone, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Probably I'm not. He claims to be a former Turning Point Action insider. So he has a tweet. It says, for the first time, TPUSA and TPA Action whistleblowers are uniting to expose the real culture inside. We've been attacked hard this week. And this is the clip. Let me start this.
Seeing my former boss get murdered on television and knowing that the very same people around him are responsible for this and the way that they were acting sucks. And it hurts because I did work my butt off out in the field to get President Trump elected and fought for this conservative movement only to get screwed over by these people, just like Charlie did. So I just want to put that out there that this week has been heavy because whistleblowers should not be attacked the way we were attacked this week.
You know, much like Matt, I did not go to over 35, 40 colleges with Charlie, recording all the debates that you guys have watched on Instagram from the comfort of your homes that ultimately shifted the tide in that election, just to merge our military with Israel, right? That's not what we worked our butts off for. And then to watch these same people every day get on Twitter, get behind Charlie's microphone, get on his studio, his stage, whatever you want to call it, and lie blatantly and attack justice while simultaneously claiming to preserve his legacy is the most damning thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. It's what fuels me. You're right, Matt. I haven't been sleeping much either, right? But I'm not tired. I am on fire to expose these demons because it is biblical levels of betrayal that we are living through right now.
So, wow.
So that's also evidence. That's testimonial from character evidence. Here's Blake, what's his name? Blake Neff, this little bald goon. with, I guess, Jack Posobiec. This is weird because, and there's also Tyler Boyer.
Bookmark that. I do want to show that.
Oh, you want to do this one?
Yeah, but bookmark that, and I'll show
Okay,
that.
I just bookmarked that. Okay, we can show. You know, I mean, I just wanted to play the thing.
I mean, again, and people are saying in chat, everybody grieves differently. I'd like to challenge that. I don't think so. I think grief, for the most part, has very similar attributes. You know, that's what grief is. Like, you can look at it. Like, the little kids can look at different facial expressions and they can categorize happy, sad, upset, devastated, scared. Like, this is a very simple thing to be able to discern whether somebody is grieving or not. And from there, I think it's even easier to discern whether somebody is pretending to be scared, pretending to laugh, pretending to do those sorts of things. So I don't buy it. I don't buy this whole thing that like people grieve differently. No, I think grief pretty much shows up in very, very identifiable ways. And if you're that weird of a griever, then you really shouldn't just be out in public grieving. Like, somebody should have told her right away, like, this does not look good. You need to take
it's not up for debate. Human beings don't express grief
like
differently.
laughter.
Yeah.
People don't express their grief like happiness.
People don't express humor differently. You know, when someone tells a joke, you laugh if it's funny. You don't laugh if it's not. You express humor one way. Human beings do. It's called risibility. It's used by Thomas Aquinas as the best instance of the first of three types of accident, the proper accident. Humans are risible. When something's funny, we laugh. When something is sad, we cry. That's the one way we express grief, the best way. You can smile. That's a little version of a laugh. You can tear up. That's a little version of a cry. But there's one way to grieve. Let's watch this guy.
We brought Mikey in, and he was so young as Charlie's assistant and handler, and has been around, like, again, one-on-one with Charlie.
We have two
most
more
of the
clips.
videos you see of Charlie, Mikey is taking over the last 5 years.
Next to it, or we have two more clips. They're short. I say just play them both, 87, 88. Just play them back to back, guys.
Handler. I mean, again, they have been just dying to tell you what really went on here. Mikey, who's Mikey? Is this a small boy? I haven't called someone Mikey.
It is weird when, like,
over the age of 7. Mikey McCoy. Do I know this name? I have this name bouncing around my cognitive schema, and it's odd because Mikey McCoy is that the guy on the front of the Life cereal box? Life with Mikey? No, I guess this is Charlie's handler. Who has handlers? Israel, right? So that's weird to admit that. Really weird in my estimation. Oh, here we go. Here is Benny Johnson, who is now totally part of the machine, saying that this was a state job. I just bookmarked that, Steph.
Okay. Yeah, calling men by their nicknames when they sound like little boy nicknames are really weird.
Calling a man Mikey, not okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let me get this going. This is Benny Johnson?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is reason for people to believe that this is a professional video. John Solomon is an excellent reporter, and Stephen Crowder has some leaked information. I want to talk about both. I want to begin by saying that I'm very, very close with Charlie and his team, and here's the thing that here's what I wish to relay to you from that. That there is some considerable evidence that there were big actors involved here. That's it. I don't want to go any further than that. I can't go any further than that. Yes,
Well, you probably need to. I don't know really what
Wow.
Yeah, so Benny's completely flipped on that subheading, which is odd to think that there's considerable evidence that there's state actors here, meaning deep state, Mossad, CIA.
And
It's
this
all
was
the
right
same
after
shit.
he died. That this is Benny Johnson those were his remarks.
Yeah, in positive news, that probably means Benny Johnson's not actually a Fed, right? If he if he kind of had the honest response initially and then just got bullied out of saying true things, that's kind of good. I mean, I guess I don't know Benny Johnson. I've never talked to him, never interacted with him, but that's kind of good. If so, Benny is, yeah. Well, oh, here's a here, play Benny later going after the kooks who say that it was a state job.
Yes, there's reason for people to believe that this is a professional hit job.
Do you have that?
Oh, this one right here. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, never mind. That's the same one. I thought this was him now.
Walking it back.
Reversing.
So the point is that he made those remarks that we just played, and then now he's 180, right? He's now there's no state job, and there's nothing to see here.
Oh, here's a meme
Disregard
he posted. My proof the prosecution is wrong, and like I bookmarked that. That's him now flip-flopping. I thought it was a video of him going after whatever. I'd also say this, really, really interesting, really, really relevant, though conceptually relevant, is this character named Paul E. Vallely. That now is put on to Paul E. Vallely, who is a TPUSA advisory board member, and I think he has something to do with the religion, prosecution. The evangelical wing. He's on the TPUSA Advisory Council, and he co-authored a paper with another military officer whose last name is Aquino, I believe. Maybe is it Paul Aquino? No, it's Paul Vallely. I forget. But the paper's called and Aquino is an official Satanist. Actually, he's worse than a Satanist. He's one of those Satanists who think that Aleister Crowley and those who were secular Satanists didn't go far enough. They think they actually worship Satan and they think he's a real guy. So he co-authored this paper with Paul Vallely. It's called From Psyop to Mind War, The Psychology of Victory. And it's all about how to control perception and to be subversive. And he's on TPUSA's advisory council. I thought they're a Christian organization. This guy's co-authoring papers with outright Satanists about psyop and mind war, how to confuse organizations. So that's really strange. Look him up, Paul E. Vallely, on the TPUSA Advisory Council. Very strange. There's a lot of mind war happening, and there's been a lot of mind war at work since September the 10th, 2025. Well, I'm going to take a break, a week-long break or so. I'll be back with you, but I might be back with Harrison Smith about his August 13th tweet, which predicted the future somehow. Nostradamus or Charlie Kirk knew who was going to get him. I might be back with John Yep. I might be back with Jesse Romero. Also, Jesse's the one that told me, if I didn't include this, that Charlie did read his book. And again, was very close to converting, just the way Bishop Joseph Brennan said that Charlie Kirk told him on September the 2nd. So it's forming a very coherent picture here. And yes, it's circumstantial. That's why I went through that long preliminary thing about circumstantial evidence being the main kind of evidence. Yeah, let's take some calls.
Okay, we have Philippe to the show. Hello, sir.
What's up, Philippe?
Hi. Good evening, Tim. Hey. Doing good.
Good evening.
Good. Yeah.
Good.
So I guess I'm just calling to just say, like, I saw the title of the show, was ready to call in, and I'm like, I mean, not call in, I was ready to give it a watch, and it was just like, you kind of went from, okay, we need to be open-minded about this, and this is like Israel killed Charlie Kirk, like very definitive, and I'm like, okay, I'll give it a listen, I'll see what you have to say. But like when we got to the Josh Hammer thing, especially, you were talking about, okay, Josh Hammer, if I'm talking about the right guy. He was the guy who said he talked to Charlie Kirk. They had a friendly conversation. He was telling him about, how to talk about Israel and things like that, even though Charlie had just said he was kind of done with dealing with Israel. He'd kind of changed his mind already. And then he puts up the tweet before saying, he retweets Trump from a decade before saying this was a public assassination, whatever, or public execution. Sorry, a public execution. And then the next day, you know, Josh Hammer says this was a public execution, like before and after. Like, that's chilling. That's chilling. That really gets me to the point where it's like I'm being reminded, like back during COVID, when people were talking about, you know, COVID was made in a lab in Wuhan, and people were saying, "No, you're crazy." That's so. Why are you even talking? People are ready to, you know, you could have been canceled for stuff, like you've been kicked off the internet, whatever. But, you know, there was a point when you got enough evidence, you were like, "Yeah, it definitely came from a lab, didn't it?" And it just took a while for everyone to catch up. I feel like this is this show is finally where I'm getting to that point where I'm like, yeah, I think you might be right. And I think we're going to get to a point somewhere down the line where maybe no one gets punished for it, but it's going to be blatantly obvious where like this creeps me out. Yeah. That Josh Hammer part creeps me out. I'm like,
I met that dude. He's a dick. I mean, like,
yeah.
I debated that guy.
Dude, everybody would hate him.
Everyone would hate. Like, I didn't think he was a murderer. I was just like, this is one of the coldest, like, most impolite, inhuman mofos I've ever met. Definitely the meanest I've ever debated. No interest. I mean, like, you guys saw me debate Jay Dyer twice, and we're like yelling. Mainly, he's yelling at me, and I just kind of looked calm and cool. And then we go out to eat afterwards, and he's playing with my kids, and his wife is nice and playing with my kid. Like, it's a gift. I got a good sense of people. I'm like, look, Jay and I get along really well. Like, we laugh. We're talking about anything else. We're going to be buddies. Josh Hammer, that dude is cold. Now, I didn't think murderer, but when I heard Dave Smith talking about him, you know, because Dave Smith debated him at a Charlie event. Charlie's friends with them both, and goes, you know, Josh Hammer was basically like, why did Charlie even include him on this? But they were in the green room being nice. Then he turned his other face around, and he was like, I'm disgusted to even be on the stage with you, Dave. I mean, they talk like this. They talk, the other side. They dehumanize. And I mean, to me, that's really chilling. But the August the 13th thing by Harrison Smith is kind of the set piece. I mean, if you call the cops and you say, look, I think my neighbor is going to kill me if I cut down the hedge between our house, they're going to be like, whatever, dude. Then if, like I said, you cut down the hedge and 2 days later you die, they're like, the neighbor probably did it. It's very probative. That means highly evidentiary evidence.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I don't know. It brought up some random thing in my head because I watched like on YouTube, there was a show like Scary Interesting, and it's just basically like a true crime show where they do different true crime stuff. And the most recent episode they had today, they had a guy who his wife disappeared, and everyone said, you know, they thought he killed his wife, and he's like, no, she ran off with the kids, and she said she doesn't like me anymore, and she went off, and everyone thought he was a killer. They convicted him, and they threw him in prison. That's kind of a silly story, but they convicted him. They throw him in prison. He's in there for several years. And this is in Syria. So it's like in the Middle East. It's one of these, you know, you hear a story from the Middle East or a random country, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a weird story.
Yeah.
And apparently a few years later, his wife does show back up again. And they're like, oh, wow. So because the reason they thought he killed her was because they did find a woman's body outside, and, you know, she was decapitated. So they couldn't identify her, but they're like, oh, well, we think you killed her. But she comes back years later and she's fine. And the twist to the story is that he goes and he meets back up with his wife. He's so angry. He says, you knew that I was in prison and you didn't come on purpose. Like, you left me in prison for years. And he strangles her to death in front of onlookers. So in a way, the jury was right because they saw.
I mean, it's dark humor, but it's dark. So we're all just, you know, laughing the laughter of the damned here, but I mean the mirthless laughter of the damned. Yeah, I mean that's funny in a gallows humor sort of way. I guess the jury was kind of right. Yeah. I would say this while you're still on. Another thing that I missed that's kind of related to your story. Your story reminded me. So it's, I guess, cross-hen equivocally related to it. Another job of defense attorneys, and you do see this with The Fugitive, great movie, one of the best movies and a great story. You see it with Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. Defense attorneys regularly do construct alternate narratives. So I don't know if this is another thing. I can't remember if it was when I was talking to Andrew or when I was talking to Jay. You know, Jay was mostly agreeing with what I was saying. Andrew is mostly almost entirely disagreeing with what I'm saying. But I was like, this is what defense attorneys do. They say it's not my guy, and they're saying someone else killed him, and they can put on in limited ways alternative narratives for what happened. Well, it wasn't my guy that killed him, but yeah, we have a dead body, right? You got to have a body before you have a murder. And here's what likely happened. Now, you're not proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the third party to this trial did it, but it's a part of what defense attorneys regularly do is they construct, hopefully they're not fabricating, but they construct alternative narratives. And you see Atticus Finch do it vis-a-vis Bob Ewell. You see Dr. Richard Kimball doing it, and he's researching the case. This is what's so cool about The Fugitive. If you haven't seen the 1995 movie, Harrison Ford, he manages to escape prison. He's falsely convicted, and he's searching out the one-armed man. He's tracking him down, and he's like leaving the police little bits of evidence. So he's like doing their job for them, because if you're falsely convicted or you're about to be falsely convicted, I'm not saying I know Tyler Robinson wasn't involved, but if you're about to be convicted as a lone shooter, then your defense attorney should be constructing alternative narratives. So I just ChatGPT'd to check me so that you know. I did this with circumstantial evidence earlier too. It said almost exactly what I said in the last show. I hadn't checked it before that. I was like, is circumstantial the main evidence? And I'm like, yes. And the prevailing misconception is that it's lesser evidence. It's exactly the same legal evidence. It's just 50 times more common than direct material evidence. Well, so I just did this. Do defense attorneys regularly construct alternate narratives? Sometimes I just see what ChatGPT will say when I'm speaking generally. It said, yes, in many criminal cases, especially those built largely on circumstantial evidence, I didn't just make this up. Defense attorneys often construct an alternative narrative of what happened. The purpose isn't necessarily to prove exactly what did happen. They're going to have a separate trial for that if it's a different bad guy. It's to show that the prosecution has not proven its version beyond a reasonable doubt. So, you know, yeah, it might be presenting an innocent explanation for suspicious evidence. That makes more sense. People jive with that more. But what I think, can't remember if it was Jay or Andrew or any of the other people I've talked to about this, dozens in the last 2 weeks, they have a harder time thinking that it's more like a movie doing what Atticus does, where he's kind of pointing at Bob Ewell. Or what Richard Kimball does, he's pointing at the one-armed man. That's what you have to do. Because if you're saying it's not me that killed this guy, okay, well, we have a body. Who did? So, I don't know. That's just another sort of aspect in this. It's not just... I don't know why people assume all this wrong stuff about the way that the criminal law works, but this is how it works. You know, most evidence is evidence in a capacious sense. There are real criminal conspiracies, particularly political assassinations, or what term was it, Philippe? Political executions, if we're quoting Josh Hammer. And thirdly, defense attorneys do construct alternate narratives. I'll say this. If what's-his-face, Tyler Robinson's defense attorney doesn't present this alternate narrative, then you know it's a state job. Because this is what a defense attorney would be pointing at, even if it weren't true. Even if Tyler's the only actor, it was just him, it was all him, no one helped him, you would do what I'm doing, right? So if the defense attorney doesn't, that almost proves the case that it's state action and this is all political theater.
Yeah, I mean, even with the blurry picture you saw, I was like, I have a fair. I mean, I'm not going to go too deep in it, but I know enough about like cameras and security cameras and things like that. If you actually look into like, you know, when you're putting in the security camera, there's actually a certain amount of pixels that you have to put for like a front door or something like that to make sure you capture enough of like the person's face and things. Because if it's too blurry, you can't. It's almost like a mathematical thing. You have to have a certain number of pixels per square inch to actually say that this person is identified. And if you don't have it, and I was looking at the picture they had of the person on the roof, and it zoomed way out. And it's like I don't care how many whatever HD quality you have on that camera, it's not it's not getting the pixels you need if it's pulled out that far away.
No, but what happened at the trial? There are like 6 seats, and fellow Catholic Jack Posobiec has one of them. And now I'll, without great countervailing reason to, I'm never going to say something negative about a Catholic unnecessarily, but it was weird because Jack said, and I'm friends with Jack's brother, but Jack said, "Oh, I definitely saw a murder happen. I saw the murder. I saw the shooting, which was flat wrong. And you could see the face clearly, which is flat wrong." And everybody bought that. And then, later on Twitter, people were kind of eating his lunch for it. But when I tweeted a few of the things I've tweeted in the last 24 hours, I was getting pushback from people that still believed what Jack Posobiec had said. And it's like, this is really strange.
Clear video.
What?
People were still saying that there's clear video of Tyler Robinson shooting. It's like, no, it could have been anybody. I mean,
I want to see it if it's clear, but I don't. What I saw, I didn't see anything. It's blurred. It's too blurred.
No, I think prosecution admitted it or something. I mean, there's some official court record that was saying like, no, there's definitely, you never see it go all the way up to a rifle shot. So it's prima facie wrong what Jack said. Why would Jack say that? It's beyond fishy. I don't like when ditzy chicks say, "Oh, it's just beyond fishy," but it is. It's well beyond fishy. It's beyond the pale. And like I said, political assassinations, political executions, very rarely. You're asking me to stretch my imagination to believe a political assassination that's a one-man job. That's very rare. You should be assuming that it was a multi-man job.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have anything to add to that, but I agree.
All right. Well, thanks, Philippe. God bless you, man. I always appreciate your input. It's interesting to hear where you're at on this. I was not at anywhere, kind of like you, 3 weeks ago. I was like, Erica's a weirdo. I did have that. But then I've been looking into it. It's really more like 2.5 weeks I've been on it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not trying to have an interesting position. I was making fun of the conspiracy theorists at first when they were saying this was such a hard shot. No 20-year-old could make that. 200 yards prone is like you have to be retarded to miss. So it's not that the hard shot was hard. It's not any of that. 30-06 rounds do not stop. And I have some more inside info that makes that even stranger. But it was off the record stuff that was told me about the initial impression of the shot passing through versus not. I can't say though. Now that I'm starting to dig, this is what happens, and it's like, shoot, man. I'm gonna watch my 6 now. It's just the whole thing's scary because this is how Israel operates. Political assassinations. They've owned up to like 1,700, more than any other country in recorded history. It's just like natural muscle movement for them. It's like wiping off your windows. It's like run of the mill day for them. This ordinary international diplomacy is, hey, we got to kill people if we kill them. Look at the movie Munich. They brag about it. Steven Juberg makes a movie about political assassinations.
It's crazy, like what they're able to get away with, killing like high profile people. And I'm reminded of that scene in JFK where the hooker is telling the prosecution when they're asking her to testify in the JFK trial, if they can take out the president of the United States, like, what do you think they're going to do to somebody like me?
Little old call girl.
Yeah. It's like all of us. I'm like, oh boy.
Different. That's what I'm saying. Once you get to it, it's creepy. Once you get to that point where it's like, oh, I'm not just speculating anymore. There's enough here that this feels real. This feels like this legitimate, like something spooky happened, and you're stepping into that, and you're thinking of the implications of that, and like what would actually need to happen for justice, and what people need to know about what happened, and that's what I'm talking about, where it gets spooky when it gets real, and that's why I was bringing up the Wuhan labs and things like that. Oh, it's like, oh, Fauci knew. The government was involved in gain of function. The government actually created the virus that inflicted the entire world, and like stuff that happened from that. And that's where it just gets, I don't know a better word than spooky. It's just spooks, Yeah. Well,
that's I mean, and then it's like the Spider-Man meme. Everyone's pointing at each other like, who's a spook, man? Who's a fat? there are a lot of them. Then they're like day walkers. They walk amongst us. And anyone that's, I'm not going to lie, man, anyone that's dishing Fed slop really hard or had a really hard turn or is ignoring what moderately observable publicly established record points at, I'm going to, if you're feeding Fed slop hard, I'm going to start thinking someone's a spook. I'm going to start, people are looking like they,
especially if you're very pro-Trump right now. If you're very pro-Trump right now, I'm a little suspicious of you too. So,
of course.
Or you're just ignoring the Iran war stuff, or just saying, "Oh, it's just another 2 weeks," or "No, he didn't promise that," or you're playing the mind games and everything. It's just, I mean, because I want to stay on course, but yeah.
Well, this is on topic because Charlie was very, very anti-Iran war. And he was getting off board for those 2 years after he realized the October the 7th thing was really a false flag toward Greater Israel, so they could do what they do to get Greater Israel as the terminus, conceptual terminus, as the telos. And I'm thinking Dwight Eisenhower, beware the military-industrial complex. It generates a great amount of wealth and creates whatever mystery desideratum is the goal of this Five Eyes, U.S.-Israel relationship. We don't really know what the mysterious. I think that's just a mystery of iniquity thing. But
I was just watching stuff on Boeing, and she's like, "Oh, it's a company, makes planes and stuff like that." And I'm hearing about scientists disappearing, and I don't believe a lot of the alien stuff, but there's a lot of the. I mean, some of that could be the government just telling people on YouTube to talk about it, or false flags or whatever. But there's still a lot of spookiness about just like Boeing. Like it's
I know,
but it's a military contractor, and it's just like,
And once your business is paramilitary, once you're paramilitary, paragovernmental, which is exactly what TPUSA is and was. Because, I've started startups. It's hard because I don't take money from, I have two partners, Real Estate for Life and St. Joseph Partners. They have to be Catholic. And, most Catholics, even though they know who I am, or they don't want to tangle in a debate, or they'll respect, whatever. Maybe they don't respect me. Even most Catholics don't want to get involved. But here's the point. Once you do a deal with the mob, and Israel is the ultimate mob, then they don't let you walk away. This is why gangs make you do a crime and they record you, so you can't just walk away. And the sad reality to this modern day tragedy of Caesar that took place last September the 10th, 2025, to an otherwise good man, is he was in it up to his neck with Israel and Israel donorship. And it's sad because he seemed to have integrity. No one around him seems to. He seemed to have integrity, and he was trying to leave the ghetto. He was trying to leave that life, the life of, I
mean, one of the things that throws me off is just like there's so many people that chicken out, so many people that apparently, I mean, we were just talking about Benny Johnson. Like, it seems like he might have gotten spooked by someone. I don't understand. I mean, maybe it's, mystery of inequity or whatever, but how, or just Benedict. You were talking about Benedict the other day with Andrew or Abate, whatever.
Anthony,
Anthony Abate. And it was just like, it seemed like he chickened out, or, well, maybe he didn't chicken out. Maybe he had legitimate false beliefs that screwed him up or whatever, but
yes,
it throws me off. That it's just how many people, I mean, just can't take the heat. They're not gonna stick to their guns. Maybe it's just they're that good at intimidation. Sometimes I'll tell my mom, it's like, I think maybe we're just not enough people are praying. Maybe it just takes grace to not be a coward like that. I mean, that's at least part of it, but
yeah. And when you don't back down, you don't always win. It's not a G-rated Disney movie. I mean, look at Charlie. He was doing the right thing, and he got regime changed for it. So look, everyone remember him in your prayers, because this isn't a baptism by desire thing, because he already had a Protestant baptism, but it was like a John Yep and I were talking. I guess you call it like a conversion by desire. with an already baptized Christian, just remember Charlie in your prayers and pray for our country. Pray for our country, because we're in a pile of trouble, and we have been for a long, long time. This country's 250 years old. We've been bad for more years than we've been good. We've been deep state more than we've been a true liberty country. But still pray for our country, and pray for me. Pray for all the people out there that are trying to be truth tellers. Pray for my family. Pray for all their families. And I will do the same with all of my viewers' families. God bless you all. I'll be on a little staycation, so don't freak out if you don't hear from me. If you don't hear from me in 5 minutes, just wait longer. I'll be back in a week. God bless you all. God bless you, Philippe. Deus Volt, everyone. Peace.